Iran and Israel war is spiraling into a deadly exchange of missiles and drones. 4 days have passed since Israel began its Operation Rising Lion. And since then, the war is escalating between both countries. Iran, which retaliated with its Operation True Promise 3, launched missiles on Israeli cities, killing 11 people and injuring dozens of others. Iran in retaliation came after a massive Israeli air campaign targeted sites across Iran. The deadly exchange marks the 4th day of a rapidly intensifying conflict between two long-time adversaries. Israel says its strikes were designed to thwart Iran's nuclear ambitions, while Tehran claims Israeli strikes killed civilians. Israel claims it has achieved area superiority over Tehran after large-scale strikes on Sunday. In a social media post, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that IAEA controlled the skies over Tehran with strikes targeting regime sites and not the civilians. This comes after Israeli military spokesperson Brigadier General Efi Defrin said the IDF hit several key sites in Iran's capital, destroying a third of the country's surface-to-surface missiles. Now, according to Iranian authorities, at least 224 people have been killed in Iran, including military commanders, nuclear scientists, and civilians. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps claimed responsibility for Monday's missile salvo at Israel, saying it successfully struck multiple Israeli cities, including Tel Aviv, Haifa, Bnei Brak, and Petah Tikva, and warned of more devastating operations to come. The U.S. ambassador to Israel said one American embassy building in Tel Aviv was likely damaged in the attack. In Iran, Israeli strikes damaged a hospital in Kermanshah, while initial reports suggested a nearby workshop was the target. Tehran has called it a war crime. Meanwhile, global leaders are urging calm. During a phone call with Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan accused Israel of threatening security in West Asia. Putin and Erdogan have called for an immediate end to fighting between Israel and Iran. Erdogan also offered to mediate during a separate conversation with Iranian counterpart. On the ground, Israel's military claims to have destroyed 120 missile launchers, a third of Iran's total. Iran, on the other hand, urged the International Atomic Energy Agency to condemn what it called a brazen attack on its nuclear facilities. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi says there has been no indication of a physical attack on the underground section of Iran's Natanz uranium enrichment site. Although the main Natanz plant's power supply was destroyed, there is no sign of further damage at the Natanz or Fordo enrichment facilities.
There has been no additional damage at the Natanz fuel enrichment plant site since the Friday attack, which destroyed the above-ground part of the pilot fuel enrichment plant, one of the plants at which Iran was producing uranium enriched up to 60% U-235. No damage has been seen at the site of the Fordo fuel enrichment plant or at the Kondab heavy water reactor, which is under construction.
Inside Iran's parliament, President Pezeshkian urged national unity, calling on citizens to stand strong against this criminal aggression. Early in the day, Iran's parliament approved Sayed Ali Madanizadeh as the new Minister of Economic Affairs and Finance. He secured 171 votes out of 246 lawmakers present and voting. He will replace Abdul Nasser Hemati, who was impeached earlier this year. With hostilities deepening, Iran announced it was scrapping planned nuclear talks with the United States, calling dialogue meaningless under continued bombardment. Mr. Edward P. Joseph is a lecturer at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies and foreign policy analyst, is now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Joseph, good to see you and welcome. Iran's foreign ministry says Israel's missile attack on a hospital in western Iran is a war crime, and now the Israeli military has issued an evacuation order for a specific area in Tehran called District 3. This is a very densely populated area in the northern part of Iran. What can the world do to call out Israel's aggression?
Eric, first, good to be with you and your viewers. And I think if your question addresses the world reaction, it seems actually relatively muted. And I would say even surprisingly so. And that comes even from Iran's neighbors in the Middle East. And as your package showed there, we saw Mr. Grossi. It was quite interesting when he reported at the this hastily called UN Security Council session on Friday, and again, you saw him referring to Iran's conduct at the Natanz plant. So he didn't just mention that there were Israeli strikes, he mentioned and he added, unnecessarily, he added that, and this is the place where Iran enriches uranium-235 to 60%, which of course vastly exceeds the 5% limit for a civilian nuclear program and approaches the 90% limit for a nuclear weapon. So it's very interesting, Eric. We don't see the intensity of condemnation that we've seen in respect to other theaters on the Middle East. And with respect, of course, to Iranian civilians, it's in Israel's own interest to minimize the impact on Iranian civilians. The Israeli foreign minister and the Israeli prime minister have made it clear that their attacks are focused on the Iranian regime and eliminating the nuclear threat, and that there's no conflict with the Iranian population. And of course, we should note that the intelligence that Israel seems to get, which is absolutely stunning and remarkable, the intelligence, to some degree, must come from Iranians who share antipathy towards the regime and would be
upset. With that being said, Mr. Joseph,
Iranian civilians were killed. Please.
Mr. Joseph, with that being said, there have been 240 lives who have been lost in Iran. If Israel says, and it keeps on saying, that this is not targeted to the civilians, then why are women and children dying? If they're targeting military installations, then why are children and women dying?
Well, Eric, I understand your question, and I'm not aware of statistics on women and children dying. The statistics that I see are 224 Iranians killed. How many of those are military and how many of those are civilian? We don't know. That's 224. Of course, that doesn't approach anything like we see in other conflicts in the Middle East or, of course, in Sudan, which is a continuing massive savage attack on civilian populations there. In Israel, the fatality count is apparently 24. That's the latest number that I see. And those are all civilians, Eric. So of the 224 Iranian, I'm not aware of the distinction there between civilian and military casualties, or are those connected to the nuclear program, while in Israel, the 24 are reportedly 100% civilian. In other words, Iran's attacks on Israel are indiscriminate in nature and hitting the civilian population 100%. Please.
Mr. Joseph, my final question to you. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is on the path to victory in Iran, claiming the army is in control over the skies of Tehran. Global leaders, including the ongoing G7 summit, is calling for restraint. Is a call for a path to diplomacy a far cry in this juncture? Very quickly.
No, it's not a far cry at all. Diplomacy is still there. But of course, as I mentioned, Eric, the indications and the intensity, the calls here, the reaction in Germany, the reaction in France, President Macron, the reaction from President Trump, we do not see, and even in the Security Council, even from Russia, which is dependent on Iran for its drone in its savage war against Ukraine. We just don't see this intensity of calls on Israel to stop. We see basically ritual calls for de-escalation. And it suggests, Eric, that in fact there's support for a focused campaign that will finally eliminate the Iranian nuclear program, or create the conditions for the United States to conclude a program that would take away that key program, including the capacity for enrichment. Please.
Mr. Edward P. Joseph, it's good to see you. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you for talking to us today.
You're welcome.